All right, hey, welcome. This is Genesee County Compassion Club Show. I'm Jeremy, your host. Glad to be back here from allpointstv.com. Hey, check out all our podcasts on YouTube if you would. That's at allpointstv.com, right out there on YouTube. But hey, we got lots of podcasts around the city, and today this is the Genesee County Compassion Club Show. We're going to talk about medical marijuana here in Michigan and around the country, let you know what's going on with medical marijuana in general, and we're also going to talk about what's happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club. Get started off with this week's announcements. We've got a few events and things coming up. First thing is I got to mention, obviously, is our new hours at the club. If you haven't been down there, check it out. We're now open on Mondays, so that's big news. We haven't been on open Mondays ever, and now we're open Mondays all the time. And our hours have been extended. We're now open from 10 to 8 every day. So Monday through Saturday, 10 to 8, makes it real nice and easy, makes it better for those folks that have to work late or that need an extra day to get out. So come on down to the club, check it out, and it's awesome. Glad we're able to do so. So I want to let you guys know about that. Next thing that's coming up at the club, obviously coming up here pretty soon, is the 710 party. Announced last week that we're going to be celebrating a day early, so this is actually going to be on July 9th, which is a Saturday. That's the reason why we're celebrating early, is because the 10th is actually a Sunday this year, and don't want to break with tradition. We're not open on Sundays, so we're going to party down on Saturday. You come on out to the club on Saturday. It's going to be a fantastic celebration. It's a regular day, so there's no additional charge for coming down. We're going to have lots of fun, lots of events going on, and it's really a celebration of our ability to use medical cannabis in a whole host of different ways. And it's a good way to find out about how you can utilize it for your health purposes, find out what the best method of ingestion is for you, and be able to see if you can help yourself out. That's what it's all about, getting better, getting help, getting treatment. All right, next thing that's coming up here I want to make mention of, we're not affiliated with this, but it's obviously a big deal, and that's why I'm bringing it up. It's the High Times Cup. It's happening this weekend right in Clio, Michigan, right here in Genesee County. It's pretty freaking sweet. So I think this is the third year they've come to Clio, and I imagine this year will be bigger than ever. So hopefully it won't be raining. I hope it's a good event. It's at the Auto City Speedway. You can check it out yourself at hightimes.com. Get yourself a ticket. Again, I know we're going to have a lot of our vendors, a lot of our members, a lot of friends there. So I wish everybody luck. I know it's a big contest as well. They're going to be having best drawings for, who's got the best flowers, who's got the best edibles, who's got the best concentrates. And, there's people from all over the world who come to compete at this event. So it really is a high-profile event. And I know that we've got a few caregivers in our club that represent us very well and have been past winners. Give shout out to 710 Savant, and I'm probably forgetting some other people. But I know that, like I said, we've got a lot of people competing from the club, and I wish them all the very best. So good luck this weekend, guys. I hope you do well, and I hope it's a fun event. Everybody stay safe, all right? That's the big key. Next thing is I want to talk about some news. We got quite a few different items on the news agenda today. I know probably first and foremost, a lot of folks talking about the primaries that occurred yesterday. And I know this isn't really medical marijuana related, but we like to talk about all kinds of things on this show, so you just have to dig with it. But we had the primaries happen yesterday, and obviously Clinton, the big winner out there, basically seizing the Democratic nomination. I don't know about you, but it just kind of feels like I just puked in my mouth. It's good that you're not actually here with me to have to bear with that, but I don't know. I don't really care for any of the mainstream candidates. I would recommend everybody check out Gary Johnson. He's a libertarian candidate, but that's just my own personal opinion. I like to see something different, and I think he talks about issues that are just as important as what the other candidates are covering, if not more so. And if your candidate isn't on the list of qualified, accepted, run-of-the-mill candidates, maybe you should check out other people. I think it's kind of insane that the media continues to pound these two people as if they're the only choices out there, and they certainly aren't. And I know there's a whole lot of people that feel disenfranchised from the Republican or Democratic side, don't like the premier candidate that's being offered. Well, hey, now it's time to actually look at another alternative and get educated on what you might actually be able to choose. So if you're tired of the picking the lesser of two evils, why not try to pick somebody that actually you like? I don't know, crazy concept. All right, I'll get back into the news here. First thing I want to talk about, obviously, is marijuana. And this here is a study It's kind of an interesting study, and it's not necessarily a positive study for those of us that are advocates of medical marijuana. But nevertheless, still want to share this with you, and we can poke fun at it, if you will, when we're done. But let's get through the information here. This is from medicalexpress.com. You can check it out yourself. And it says here, in a paper published in Human Brain Mapping, researchers demonstrated for the first time with functional magnetic resonance imaging that long-term marijuana users had more brain activity in the mesocorticolimbic reward system. I'm hoping I said that correctly. When presented with cannabis cues than with natural reward cues. So, to put this in a nutshell, the study shows that marijuana disrupts the natural reward circuitry of the brain, making marijuana highly salient to those who use it heavily. In essence, these brain alterations could be a marker of transition from recreational marijuana use to problematic use, says Dr. Francesca Philby. She's the director of the Cognitive Neuroscience Research in Addictive Disorders at the Center for Brain Health and associate professor in the School of Behavioral and Brain Sciences. Says here's what the study did. So check this out. Here's where the meat and bones is. Researchers studied 59 adult marijuana users and 70 non-users, accounting for potential biases such as traumatic brain injuries and other drug use. Study participants rated their urge to use marijuana after looking at various visual cannabis cues, such as a pipe, a bong, a joint, or a blunt, and self-selected images of preferred fruit, such as banana, an apple, grapes, or oranges. It says researchers also collected self-reports from study participants to measure problems associated with marijuana use. On average, marijuana participants had used the drug for 12 years, so it gives you a little bit of info or background. It says when presented with marijuana cues compared to fruit, marijuana users showed enhanced response in the brain regions associated with reward, such as the orbitofrontal cortex, or the striatum, the anterior cingulate gyrus, or the precuneus and the ventral tegmental area. So these are different parts of your brain, I'm assuming. Certainly not an expert in this area, but it says here, we found that this disruption of the reward system correlates with a number of problems, such as family issues individuals have because of their marijuana use, Philby said. Continued marijuana use, despite these problems, is an indicator of marijuana dependence. So that's what the study says. That's what Dr. Philby says. And again, you have to take one thing. Let's dissect this just a little bit. You got to take into account the fact that the doctor works for the Cognitive Neuroscience Research and Addictive Disorders at the Center for Brain Health. So it's kind of like her job to prove that there's problems with drugs. Okay, so let's move on past that. Next point I'd like to point out is the fact of what the study is. Okay, basically we're showing people pictures of either marijuana-related items or pictures of fruit. And we're measuring the response inside of their brain when they see those items and what their response is. So we're saying that basically folks that used marijuana in the past or have used it for at least, well, according to this, about 12 years, when they were shown a picture of a bong, the brain got more active, because they associate that with a reward. Versus the person who doesn't smoke marijuana, when they were showed the picture of the bong, there's no response. So, I mean, kind of a silly type of survey. I mean, this is study, if you will. Who gets paid to do this kind of stuff? I mean, really? I mean, all I know is we better not be giving out tax money for this kind of baloney here. And probably are. But at any rate, I mean, yeah, come on. This is a silly study, absolutely preposterous. Of course, someone who has used cannabis and then gets shown a picture of something related to cannabis is going to trigger activity in the brain because they know that, well, hey, that equals reward. I don't know. And you have to look at the beginning of the article as well, because it starts out by saying, in a paper published in Human Brain Mapping, blah, 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 long-term marijuana users had more brain activity, period. So you're saying that people with marijuana use, long-term use, have more brain activity, and that somehow equates back in Dr. Philby's study to that's detrimental. It's not a good thing. It causes problems in the family. Well, Dr. Philby, I think you'd be better off actually treating patients than trying to research bullcrap like this. But hey, that's my own opinion. You guys can check this out at Medical Express for yourself. I think it's, you have to really break stuff down like this because it's headlines like this that are used. And the headline, again, is long-term marijuana use changes brain's reward circuit. That could be positive or a negative. Most people are going to read that and think, oh, that's a negative. It's hurting people's brains, blah, blah, blah. When in actuality, the study shows that people who use marijuana actually have a more active brain. Take it for what you will. That's what it is. So if somebody tries to tell you otherwise, you can shove it back down their throat and tell them you're full of it. All right? And that's what we got to do. We got to debunk the baloney. And
I have a question, though.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard people say when they smoke weed, they're paranoid. Is it from the drug itself, or is it because of fear of being busted? I mean,
that's a question that's been posed in the cannabis community for quite some time because a lot of times you're right, John. The paranoia is associated with law enforcement, some type of criminal action being done to that person because of the use. However, we don't really know for sure if the paranoia is a direct result of that or if it's just associated with something else. Some folks have told us, and I can tell you from our patients' experience, that they do have increased levels of anxiety based on what type of cannabis it is that they're using. And that is something that you need to be aware of that can happen and has nothing to do with whether or not somebody's scared or afraid of being busted. And in fact, I've been told by a number of different patients quite the opposite, that they had no fear of being busted, but yet it still made them quite anxious. Even felt like it increased their heart rate. Maybe gave them fits of paranoia, made them want to not go out in public. So there are different adverse effects that can happen on a mental level, and a lot of times I gotta say that these are associated with the sativa type of cannabis because it does tend to make you more cerebral, make you more creative for some folks. But on the other hand, it might make some people overthink things, which can result in that feeling of paranoia. So it is something you have to be concerned with. It is something you have to watch. And, you have to monitor your own personal use. So if you feel, anxiety creeping up, after using a certain type of medication, you might want to take note because it could actually be an effect of the cannabis there. And that's something that can be avoided by simply selecting a different type of cannabis. So, good point, John. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, next story. Going to move on here. And this is kind of related back to what I was just talking about with Clinton winning the nomination. Obviously we got a big split here. A lot of people don't support Clinton. Same thing with Trump. But, the one thing that people are supporting, it's marijuana. Okay, this is crazy. Check this out. Go to marketwatch.com. That's where the story's going at. It says here, nearly 90% of Americans, 81% Republicans, 94% Democrats, support the legal use of medical marijuana. And this is according to a Quinnipiac, how do you say that, John? Quinnipiac University.
I've seen that. I can't. That's the thing is, I'd rather hear somebody say it's like more of a smooth talker or more professional, more professional.
Does that sound good though? Quinnipiac.
Quinnipiac. Yeah, but I've always wondered how that was pronounced.
Okay, well, Quinnipiac University. I didn't go there, so I can't tell you how to pronounce her name. Anyways, they did a poll of 1,500 voters. It was released on Monday, and it says here, for comparison, 55% of Americans think laws governing the sale of firearms should be more strict. So there's a hot button issue, something that's definitely been in the news, something that people feel very strongly about one way or another. 55% said that they think the sale should be more strict. However, 90% of those people, and again, they polled 1,500 voters, 90% said they would support the legal use of medical marijuana. So that's a pretty strong result. Overwhelming support, and certainly far more than any type of presidential candidate has currently received, or probably ever received for that matter. So this is a clear issue, I think, when it comes to public policy, and I think it's something that our politicians need to step up and embrace and realize that with a proper form, proper accounting for everyone involved, they can pass legislation that is not going to further, damage their career. It's just not going to show up as a negative. It's going to be shown as a positive, a progressive type of thing, if you will. And I know a lot of Republicans want to stay away from the whole progressive word, but let's get real here. All right, we need to move forward. Okay, so that's the Quinnipiac poll. Quinnipiac, there you have it, 90%. Pretty strong number, probably the highest one I've ever seen. And again, that's for legal medical marijuana. Probably on a nation scale, and I think it's pretty preposterous that we have 26 plus states here in the United States that allow medical marijuana on some level. And yet there are still 24 states, obviously, out there where it's completely illegal. People dying and suffering could be using this product effectively. We got all kinds of different ailments out there that can be treated effectively with cannabis. And those people have no option to use that. I think that something needs to be done on a national level. So, all right, next story here I want to share with you. This is from Nevada. And, I think this is an important story because it kind of goes along with what we're just talking about. And it's really how this boils down to the media and, propaganda, if you will. You have to realize that the major networks in this country are all owned by just a few people. And those owners actually do call the shots. This story here is going to illustrate that for you. And I want to point it out because if you want real news, you got to come to a source like this right here at allpointstv.com. So let me show you how this works. A conservative billionaire has succeeded in pressuring an influential Nevada newspaper to reverse its longtime support for legalizing marijuana by buying it and then sending its editorial writers to visit a drug treatment facility. So this is a story from marijuana.com. You can check it out yourself. And we're referring to Sheldon Adelson, which he is probably one of the richest men in the world and has been a long-time staunch supporter of very conservative policies and absolutely hates marijuana. Doesn't want it in any way, shape, or form, and has done just about everything he can to deter the progression of this in the United States. So I'll go on with the story here. It says, legalizing weed would jeopardize the health of countless Nevadans, expose more people to drug abuse and addiction, put excessive stress on the state's healthcare facilities, and do little to relieve the state's bloated prison population, reads an editorial in Wednesday's edition of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. So that's the paper that we're talking about. The paper was purchased last December by Sheldon Adelson, operator of Las Vegas's Sands Casino, one of the richest people in the world according to Forbes, and a staunch opponent of not just legalizing marijuana, but also of allowing its medical use. He donated the lion's share of funds in opposition to medical cannabis initiative that was narrowly defeated by Florida. If you remember, we reported about that on this show back in 2014. So Sheldon has come up before. The new editorial, a stark reversal of the Review-Journal's previous strong support for ending cannabis prohibition, comes as Nevada voters prepare to decide on legalization measure in November. Says here, when advocates were collecting signatures to qualify the initiative for the ballot, the editorial board called it an important step toward fixing a failed policy and telling Nevadans, if you are presented with a petition and you're registered voter, sign it. So they had pretty strong support prior to Mr. Adelson purchasing the paper. Obviously, they've totally switched their mindset now that he's the owner and tells them what to say. And I think we need to take note of the fact that the owners of the major media networks in this country dictate what they tell us, and that certainly has some serious ramifications if you stop and think about it. So, all right, next story. Moving on here. Screw Sheldon Adelson. He's a billionaire, so I'm probably be taken out when I leave the building here. But John, you'll be looking out for me, right?
Because I can't stand Sheldon Adelson because he's also he's basically a reprehensible character in my opinion. He's like
he's the 10th of the 1% guys.
Yeah, and he's like he just supports a lot of things I just totally disagree with. I mean, I like the vices. I mean, my family made money with bars, okay? And he's involved in that stuff, too.
I don't mind casinos.
No, the casinos, but I mean, he's kind of self-righteous in that point. Oh, I don't want you smoking weed. Well, you serve drinks at the damn casinos. I guarantee that. So, I mean...
And gambling. I mean, it's not exactly the most conservative thing to do.
He's probably got a hand in the prostitution, too, out there, but,
Oh, now, John.
Yeah. So,
all right. No, we just badmouth the billionaires. Anyways, all right, moving on here. I want to talk about this as well. This is another national issue I think that we need to have talked about. We need to have it faced. And this is from marijuana.com as well. It says here, the story goes, a pair of congressional Democrats are asking the Treasury Department to reinterpret a federal law they say results in marijuana business being taxed at an unfair rate. So if you've been keeping up with this, it's a problem, all right? Under Section 280E of the IRS code, cannabis businesses are not able to write off normal operating expenses such as rent, utilities, payroll from their taxes. It's a major blow. The provision applies to anyone who sells Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 drugs and was enacted in 1982 after a drug dealer claimed his yacht and weapons purchases as business expenses on his taxes. So obviously they had an over-the-top extreme case. However, they created a law after that case, and now it's really kind of being thrown into this mix here on the level of going after businesses who would normally be able to write off these normal expenses, and now they have to turn around and since they can't write it off, now it's profit, and they're taxed exorbitantly because of that. So it says here, Congress did not envision its future application to marijuana businesses caught in between state and federal laws, says Representative Earl Blumauer from Oregon and Barbara Lee from California. They wrote in a letter to Treasury Secretary Jacob Lew on Friday. It says, yet marijuana dispensaries operating in accordance with state law in 24 states are subject to this provision and to significantly higher tax rates than other businesses, threatening their financial viability. The inability to make usual deductions and take advantage of other credits available to other businesses often leads marijuana producers and sellers paying an effective tax rate between 65 and 75%, compared with the other companies that pay about 15 to 30%. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. Obviously, we need to have a policy change here in accordance with 280E, which is the Internal Revenue Code. There's been multiple bills that have been presented in the past. I can think of I think it was the Barney Frank Todd bill that was presented last year. There's a couple different bills that have been presented prior to that and afterwards that deal with marijuana businesses on a national level, not just on the taxes, but also being able to deal with banking and other related business issues. These things need to be addressed. As pointed out in the article, you have 24 plus states in the country already operating legally according to state law, and they're being basically extorted, by the government because they can't claim normal expenses. So this is definitely something that needs to be changed. Definitely say kudos to Representative Blumenauer and Representative, what was her name again? Barbara Lee from California. Maybe we could get a Michigan representative to jump on that bandwagon. Wouldn't that be nice? Maybe you could call and tell them to do so. All right, next state, moving on here. Got another state I want to talk about. It's Vermont. Man, I love Vermont. It just makes me think of maple syrup. You guys like maple syrup? Love maple syrup. All right. This is from thecannabist.co. Check it out. Article states, Democratic Governor Peter Schmoulin, I like that name, Schmoulin, he signed into law a bill expanding the medical conditions that can allow a Vermont patient to be prescribed marijuana for treatment of symptoms. Added to the list are patients with chronic pain, glaucoma, and those in hospice care. So it says here, marijuana had been allowed for severe pain, but not pain that was less severe but chronic. So now they've continued and they've added on, along with severe pain, they've added on chronic pain. So that's a good thing. It says critics of that situation complained that patients could more easily obtain prescription opiates for pain treatment than marijuana. Well, maybe those critics weren't aware that opiates kill you. I don't know. I mean, seriously? That's an alternative? You're right. For most people, that is an alternative. But the healthy alternative is going to be cannabis use. It says here in the article, in signing the bill, Schmoulin said opiate addiction has become a severe problem in Vermont and around the country. He says if a much less addictive marijuana can be used instead, that can address patients' pain without the threat of severe addiction. There you go. So Governor Schmoulin's reading. He's picking up the mail that I'm sending him. Congrats to them. Vermont rocks. I love you. Well, there you go. I mean, that's sensible lawmaking right there. Kudos to the people in Vermont, and kudos to the folks that can now get relief that previously couldn't. I think that's fantastic. That's a beautiful thing. All right. Got another story here I want to share with you. Wrap up this week show with this. If I could actually get my internet working again. I think we just lost our Wi-Fi. All right, well, I'm going to try to shoot on this one anyways. The state of Washington has a medical marijuana program. They're also recreational as well. However, their medical marijuana program does require state registration in the program. And unfortunately, according to the article, they have had a info breach. So definitely a concern. Everybody. In fact, I've had a lot of folks here in Michigan talk about, well, I don't want to get a medical marijuana card because then my name goes on a list, man, and I don't want to be on no list. I ain't going to have the government have my name on a list. And I'm like, really? Do you have a driver's license? You're on the list, buddy. I mean, come on, seriously. They're going to find you, all right? But at any rate, unfortunately, things like this do happen, and it does give people legitimate reasons for not wanting to be on a list. I mean, when the government's own information is being compromised and patients' info, their medical info is getting into the wrong hands, number one, the government should be held accountable. Number two, that kind of crap should not happen. I mean, seriously. So hopefully nothing like that will ever happen here in Michigan. I know that LARA has the department that handles it here in Michigan, which is LARA. I know that they have the information. I know that they use subcontractors to help process the card that was passed into law here just about a year or two ago. So our information here in Michigan, it does get passed around. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it's completely safe in a vault and no one's ever going to know. Hopefully that's the case. By law, it's the case, okay? But we all know sometimes bad things happen. And in this case here in Washington, it did. People's info was compromised. What kind of damage would get out? I don't know. I mean, as well as I do, the information that's on your Michigan application is probably enough to go fill out a credit card app or, get a loan of some sort. Certainly not the kind of info that you want to have just rolling around out there. Information, it's an issue today. Something people have to take seriously about protecting their identity. Identity theft is a huge problem, and obviously it's a problem here in the state of Washington. So I don't know. I'm not trying to discourage you from enrolling in the Michigan medical marijuana program, but you do have to be careful. Maybe you should be more careful about the stuff at home, like your trash that you throw out, your receipts, stuff like that. So that's something you can control. Take care of what you can control. Don't worry about the other stuff. I think that's just good advice. So, all right, guys, that's the stories that I have for you this week. That's the news from around the country of what's going on in marijuana. Before we wrap up this week's show, I do want to give you an update as to what's going on here in Michigan. All right, so most of you know that there was a petition drive going on to collect signatures to get a ballot proposal. So they were looking to get this is for adult use, it's for recreational marijuana use, and that's what they're shooting for. It's the group MI Legalize. They've been all over the paper, all over the news. If you haven't heard about it by now, you've been living in a cave. But here's what's going on. Basically, last Wednesday, actually, and we reported it here on the Genesee County Compassion Club show, the group MI Legalize turned in all of their signatures for this ballot, and they needed a total of like 250,000 plus. The group turned in 350,000 plus, and they turned them in last week. So the update that I want to give to you this week is that basically the government's saying it's not enough. They're saying that there's ones that can't be validated. They're saying that there's ones that are outside of the 180-day time frame. These are all contended issues. And so we may see some type of litigation happening with this particular campaign. The attorney for the group, Jeffrey Hank, has been quoted in the paper saying that he will litigate if necessary, which basically means he'll have to sue to get the policies changed. On top of all of that, we just had Governor Snyder sign into effect a bill which was sponsored by our own representative, our own senator right here in Grand Blanc area, Senator Robertson, limiting the time frame for signature collections to a very specific 180 days, which it was before the bill passed. However, there was a little bit of leeway there in being able to use different systems to validate signatures that were potentially older than 180 days. So basically they want to say, all right, it's older than the 180 days, well, we can still verify that the person's signature is still good, which would make sense. But the governor said no. He is not concerned with you and your wishes. He feels that you should use your legislature. That's what it's there for. So that's his opinion, not mine. I would say that it's good to be able to redress government when necessary. It's good to be able to take a petition. It's a part of our constitutional rights. What the limits are on that petition gathering and so on. I don't know. I mean, I think we should be able to incorporate a little bit of modern technology use. Having to go around and do this stuff the old-fashioned way, or at least having to validate it the old-fashioned way, I think it's archaic. think we need to move forward. And, I think the most important thing is that we preserve our democratic process. And when the governor signed this into law, he basically is saying, he said, anyways, is that he is preserving the democratic process by ensuring only the really important issues are actually going to get in front of voters. And, I think that anything that collects 250,000 people's signatures is probably pretty important. And it probably should be, I think the margin of error should be looked at, with a conservative approach towards getting it on the ballot. I mean, I think it would be, in a democratic country, I don't think there's anything wrong with allowing the people to make their own decisions. I think we should encourage that, not try to restrict it and limit it. That seems opposite of what we stand for. But this is something that's already been passed into law by your governor. So the only thing you can do now is, get a different governor, which is not going to happen. So anyways, you're screwed, all right? That's what I'm trying to say. It's screwed. It's just screwed. But the petition was done prior to the bill being signed, so there's still a potential that it could get passed through like some type of a grandfathering thing, if you will. It doesn't really take care of the number of signature issues or the other things that the Board of Canvassers is trying to throw up there. But, if you look at it, I would have to say the state's been trying to kill this campaign from the start, and it appears to me that they're doing so. So, at any rate, I don't want to pee on the party. I hope it goes through. I hope that democracy reigns. I'd like to see the people be able to choose this for themselves. Certainly, there's an overwhelming majority for marijuana here, adult recreational use in Michigan. We've had polls done. Recent one by, I think it was a MERS News poll, was over 58%. So that's a pretty strong majority when you're looking at particular issues. And, we'll have to see if this is going to get on the ballot. Right now, it's not looking good, though. So I will say that in addition to that, another thing here in Michigan, but a little bit different topic, I've heard that the medical marijuana bills, which we discussed at length on the program here last year, I've heard that they're being rehashed and will be posted soon with new versions. So we'll keep a close eye on that as things develop. And once we get the actual form of the bill, or once we actually see a version of it, I've been told there's been a lot of changes and revisions done to it. What they are, I do not know at this point. But as soon as we find out, we'll be sharing that with you right here on the program. So you want to make sure you stay tuned in future episodes to find out what the government's trying to do with your medical marijuana program here in Michigan. And I guarantee you, whatever they're proposing some big changes. So we definitely want to keep an eye on that. All right, that's it for this week. I want to say thank you for joining me at allpointstv.com here at the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Stay involved, stay informed, and join us again here next week at the show. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you here later. See ya.